All right, chapter 16 of Terry Brooks's great fantasy novel, Magic Kingdom for Sale Sold. Book 1 of 6. Who knows, maybe he'll write book 7. Technically, there's no reason he can't keep writing more books. This could just go on forever if he wants it to. I'm seeing that he just recently, or somewhat recently, wrote book 6. Maybe he's working on book 7. It wouldn't surprise me. I thought this was just a trilogy. I thought it ended as a trilogy, and then I saw there was a book 4 and a book 5, and apparently books. Well, not apparently. I'm getting it in the mail. I forget when he wrote it, but it was more recent. He hadn't written. It had been a long time since he had written book 6. So chapter 15 is called Nightshade. This is wild. I've already read it. Couple weeks ago for the second time, and this is wild. This is amazing. You're gonna really enjoy this. Hopefully this will catch on and more people will start listening to me read it. But if there's no interest, there's no interest, and then I won't bother with the second book. I'll just read it for myself along with my Desert of Desolation series. I'm gonna read this module on my own if no one wants me to read it on the channel. And then I'll just give a review of it, which is something that I should do. I should give a review. Ye Old Geek made reviews of modules, D&D modules, and I really like listening to his reviews. Don't know if I can do them as good as him, but I'll try. Anyway, chapter 15, Nightshade. It was like stepping off into a pool of blackened, foul water. The mist rose. I'm just checking my camera angle and everything. The mist rose to greet them, lapping anxiously at their boots. It climbed to their thighs and curled to their waists. It tugged at their shoulders and finally their necks. A moment later, they were submerged in it completely. Ben had to suppress a sudden urge to hold his breath against its suffocating tide. Foul blackened water. Okay. Lapping anxiously. Okay, they just got up to their necks, I guess. His hand gripped Willow's tightly. The mist was an impenetrable screen, closing about them as if a blanket that would smother them. It clung to their skin with fingers of damp insistence, and its touch was an itch that scratching would not cure. The smell of rotting wood and earth filled the air, permeating the mist, giving it the texture of toxic liquid splashed upon the skin. An unpleasant warmth issued out of it, as if something huge were trapped within the murk and sweating in terror as its lifeblood was sucked steadily away. Ben sensed the terror to be his own, and he fought back against it. The back and underarms of his tunic were damp, and his breathing was ragged. He had never been so frightened. It was worse than when the mark had come for him in the time passage. It was worse than his encounter with the dragon. It was a fear of something felt and not seen. His feet picked their way mechanically down the scrub-choked slope. He was barely aware of their movement. He could see the stocky forms of the gnomes a few feet ahead of him. All right, so it's just mist. It's okay, because otherwise they'd be underwater. I read that wrong. A few feet ahead of him as they doggedly worked their way forward. He could see Willow beside him, her green-skinned form ghost-like. The corn silk hair on her head. Corn silk hair. I'm trying to think what that looks like. I've seen a picture of Willow on a book cover, so I have an idea of what she looks like, I guess. Corn silk hair. On her head. Calves and forearms trailing out behind her as if stirred by the mist. Right. He could see bits and pieces of the scrub and rock about him, and of trees and ridges somewhere far ahead. He saw them and was blind to them. It was what he could not see and could only feel that commanded the focus of his attention. It was what was hidden that he seemed suddenly to see best. His free hand searched for the medallion tucked within his tunic, and he fingered it reassuringly through the cloth. The minutes dragged on as the 4 companions groped their way through the haze, not water. I think the water is up to their ankles or something like that. I don't know. I could read it again, but it's no big deal. Through the haze, eyes searching sightlessly. Then the slope leveled out, the mist thinned, and scrub turned to brush and forest. They had reached the plateau, several dozen feet above the hollow's floor, then blinked. He could see again. Trees spread away before him in a tangle of trunks, limbs, and vines, and ridges thrust upward sharply into their mass, cresting against the skyline that was canopied in roiling mist. The hollow's rim had disappeared. Everything beyond was gone. Ben pushed past the gnomes to stand on a small promontory that jutted out from the slope, and he stared into the wilderness. His breath caught sharply in his throat. "Oh, my God," he whispered. The hollow spread away for as far as the eye could see, farther than was conceivably possible. The deep fell had mushroomed into something so vast that its walls could no longer contain it. The deep fell had grown as big as all of Landover. "Willow," he whispered urgently. She was beside him at once. He pointed out into the forest, into the vast, endless track of it, terror reflected in his eyes. As he struggled to comprehend what he was looking at, she understood at once. Her hands closed about him, squeezing. "It is only illusion, Ben," she said quickly. "What you see is not really there. It is only Nightshade's magic at work. She has mirrored back 1,000 times the whole of the hollows to frighten us away." Ben looked again. He saw nothing different, but he nodded as if he did anyway. "Sure, just a trick with magic to scare us off." He took a deep breath. He was calm again. "Want to know something, Willow? It works pretty well." He gave her a quick smile. "How is it that you aren't fooled?" She smiled a pixie grin back. "The fairy in me senses such tricks." They continued their descent toward... That's kind of a simplistic response there, don't you think, Terry? The fairy in me senses... okay, maybe, I guess. I would like a little more there. They continued their descent toward the hollow's floor. Philip and Sot seemed unbothered by the illusion. That was probably because their eyesight was so poor that they were unaware of the illusion. Exactly, Ben decided. Sometimes ignorance was bliss. They reached the hollow's floor and paused. The tangle of the wilderness spread away before them, seemingly endless. Gnarled trunks and limbs twisted like spiders' webs against the ceiling of mist. Vines clung like snakes, and brush choked on itself in thick tangles. The earth was damp and yielding. Philip and Sot sniffed the air a moment, then started forward. Ben and Willow followed. They pushed ahead through the wilderness, finding paths where it seemed there could be none. The hollow's wall disappeared behind them, and the jungle closed about. It was eerily still. They neither saw nor heard another living thing. No animals called, no birds flew, no insects hummed. The light was weak. Sunlight screamed into a dim gray haze by the clouds of mist. Shadows lay over everything. There was a sense of having been swallowed whole. There was a feeling of having been snared. They had not gone far when they encountered the lizards. They were at the edge of a deep ravine and about to start down when Ben saw movement at the bottom. He brought the others to a hurried halt and peered cautiously into the shadows. Dozens of lizards clustered together in the pit of the ravine, their scaled greenish-black bodies slithering across one another, their wicked-looking tongues flicking at the misted air. They were all sizes, some as large as alligators, some as small as frogs. They blocked all passage forward. Willow took Ben's hand and smiled. "Another illusion, Ben," she assured him. "This way, High Lord," advised Philip. "Come, High Lord," invited Sot. They descended into the pit, and the lizards disappeared. Ben was sweating again and wishing he didn't feel like such a fool. Other illusions awaited them, and Ben was fooled each time. There was a monstrous old ash tree. Boy, good thing he brought Willow. Yeah, I guess it was a good decision. I forgot that this is how this all worked out. There was a monstrous old ash tree clustered thick with giant bats. There was a stream filled with piranha-like fish. Ugh, I'm not going in that. Worst of all, there was the clearing in which vaguely human limbs stretched from the broken earth, clawed fingers grasping at anything that sought to pass through. Each time Willow and the gnomes led him resolutely forward, and the imagined dangers evaporated into the mist. More than an hour slipped by before they reached the swamp. It was past midday. A vast marsh of reeds and quicksand stretched across their path for as far as the eye could see. Steam lifted from the marsh, and the quicksand bubbled as if fed by gases from the earth below. Ben glanced quickly at Willow. Illusion, he asked. Reed's quick stretch for path. Okay, Steve. Already prepared for the answer she would give, but this time she shook her head. No, the swamp is real. The gnomes were sniffing the air again. Ben glanced out across the swamp. A crow sat on a branch of deadwood halfway across, a large, ugly bird with a streak of white cresting its head. It stared at him with its tiny dark eyes and its head cocked reflexively. Ben glanced away. What now? He asked the others. There is a trail further on, High Lord, Philip answered. A pathway across the marsh, Sot agreed. They waddled ahead, following the line of the swamp. Ferret faces lifted, testing the air with their noses. Ben and Willow trailed slowly after. 100 feet further on, the gnomes turned into the swamp and proceeded to cross. The swamp looked no different here than anywhere else, but the ground was firm enough to hold them, and they were safely past in a few minutes' time. Ben glanced back at the crow. It was still watching him. Let's not get paranoid, he muttered to himself. They pressed on into the jungle. They had gone only a short distance further when Philip and Sot became suddenly excited. Ben pushed quickly forward and found that the gnomes had discovered a nest of forest mice and flushed the family out. Philip slipped into the brush on his belly, snaked through it soundlessly, and emerged with one of the unfortunates firmly in hand. He bit off its head and gave the body to Sot. Ben grimaced, kicked Sot in the backside, and angrily ordered them both to get moving. The memory of the headless mouse stayed with him. He forgot about the mouse when they came up against a wall of brambles. The brambles lifted better than a dozen feet into the air, mingling with the trees and vines of the forest, stretching away into the distance. Again, Ben glanced at Willow. The brambles are real too, she announced. Philip and Sot tested the air, walked up and down the wall both ways, then turned right. They had gone about 50 feet when Ben saw the crow. It was sitting on the crest of the wall of brambles just above them and staring down, sharp eyes fixed on Ben. He stared back momentarily and could have sworn the bird winked. Here, High Lord, Philip called. A passage, High Lord, Sot announced. The gnomes pushed through the brambles as if they didn't exist, and Ben and Willow followed. The brambles parted easily. Ben straightened on the other side and glanced back. The crow was gone. He saw the crow several times after that, sitting in trees or perching on logs, motionless as it watched him with those same secretive eyes. He never saw it fly, and he never heard it call. Once he asked Willow if she saw it too, none too certain that this wasn't just another illusion. She said that she did see it, but that she had no idea what it was doing there. It seems to be the only bird in the hollows, he pointed out doubtfully. She nodded. Perhaps it belongs to Nightshade. That was not a very reassuring thought, but there was nothing Ben could do about it, so he put the matter out of his mind. The jungle had begun to thin, the trunks, limbs, and vines giving way to small clearings in which pockets of mist hung like tethered clouds. There was a brightening in the sky ahead and a hint of the jungle's end. But there was no sign of the walls of the hollow as there should have been, and the deep fell was as sprawling and endless as it had first seemed. Can you tell where we are or how far we've come? He asked the others, but they shook their heads wordlessly. Then abruptly the jungle gave way, and the four companions stood on the threshold of a castle fortress that dwarfed anything Ben had ever seen or imagined could exist. The castle rose up before them like a mountain, its towers lifting into the clouds and mist so that they were screened from view, its walls receding into the distant horizon for miles. Turrets, battlements, parapets, and ramparts were constructed one upon the other in dazzling geometrical designs, the whole so vast in scope that it might have enclosed an entire city within its stone block shell. It sat upon a great plateau with the jungle grown thick at its base. A rock-strewn trail led from where they stood to the open castle gates and a raised portcullis. Ben stared at the castle in disbelief. Nothing could be this huge, his instincts told him. Nothing could be of such monstrous size. It had to be an illusion, a trick of magic. Well, why don't you ask Willow? Like his vision of the hollows and the things they had encountered. What is this place, Willow? He blurted out, cutting short his speculation. and the disbelief and awe he felt were apparent in his voice. "I do not know, Ben." She stood with him, her own gaze fixed on the monstrosity. No, she didn't say it was an illusion. She shook her head slowly. "I do not understand it. This is not an illusion. Okay, this is not an illusion, Ben. And yet it is. There is magic at work. But the magic accounts for only part of what we see." The Cajon gnomes, too, were confused. They shifted about uneasily, their ferret-like faces casting about for a scent they could rely upon. They failed to find one and began mumbling in guarded tones. Ben forced his gaze away from the castle and looked carefully about for anything that would give him a clue as to its origin and purpose. He saw nothing at first save for the jungle and the mist. Then he saw the crow. It was perched on a tree limb several dozen yards away, wings folded carefully in, eyes fixed on him. It was the same crow, glossy black feathers crested in white. Ben stared at it. He could not explain it, but he was certain that the crow knew what this was all about. I think the word "was" is another error in this book, man. How did you not fix this stuff? I would demand that all of these errors get fixed. I couldn't put up with this. It infuriated him that the bird was sitting there so placidly, as if waiting to see what they would do next. "Come on," he told the others, and started up the trail. They walked cautiously ahead, and the castle loomed closer. It didn't shimmer and disappear as Ben had expected it might. Instead, it took on an ominous, grim appearance as the weathered rock grew more detailed and the sound of wind whistling through towers and ramparts grew pronounced. Ben was leading now, with Willow a step behind. The gnomes had fallen back, their paws fastened to Ben's pants, their furry faces apprehensive as they peered out from behind his legs. Dry leaves and twigs rustled across the stone pathway, and the warmth of the jungle had faded to a chill. The entrance to the castle gaped open before them, a black hole with iron teeth. Sheesh. Entrance to the castle, get a black hole. Okay. Shadows wrapped everything beyond in an impenetrable shroud. Ben slowed at the gates and peered guardedly into the gloom. He could just make out what appeared to be a kind of courtyard with a few scattered benches and tables, a cluster of blackened stanchions, and a weather-beaten throne covered with dust and spiderwebs. He could see nothing beyond that. He went forward once more, the others trailing. They passed beneath the shadow of the portcullis and entered the courtyard. It was massive, unkempt, and empty. Their footsteps rang in hollow cadence through the stillness. Ben was halfway across when he saw the crow. Somehow it had gotten there before them. It sat up on the throne, eyes fixed directly on him. He slowed and stopped. The crow's eyes blinked and suddenly turned blood red. "Nightshade," Willow whispered quickly in warning. The crow began to change. It seemed to expand against the gloom, shimmering with an aura of crimson light, its shadow rising up against the throne like a wraith set free. Blackened stanchions flared and caught fire, and light exploded through the darkness. The Cajon gnomes gasped in dismay, bolted back through the gates of the castle, and were gone. They flew. Willow stood next to Ben, her hand gripping his as if it were a lifeline that kept her from drowning. Ben watched the crow transform into something darker still, and he was suddenly afraid that he had made an awful mistake. Then the crimson aura died away, and there was only the light from the fires that burned in the iron stanchions. The crow was gone. Nightshade sat upon the crumbling throne. "Welcome to Deepfell, great and mighty High Lord," she greeted, her voice barely more than a soft hiss. I'd love to hear what that would sound like. She was not what Ben had expected. She didn't really look much like a witch at all, although it never crossed his mind even for an instant that she wasn't. She was tall and sharp-featured, her skin white and flawless, her hair raven black, except for a single streak of white that ran down its center, just like the crow. She was neither old nor young, but somewhere in between. There was an ageless look to her features, a sort of marble statue quality that suggested an artist's creation that might survive all human life. Ben didn't know what artist had created the witch, whether good or god or devil, but some thought had gone into the sculpting. Nightshade was a striking woman. She rose, black robes falling all about her tall, spare form. She came down off the throne and stopped a dozen feet in front of Ben and Willow. You show more determination than I had thought possible for a pretender. The magic does not frighten you as it should. Is that because you are stupid or merely reckless? Ben's mind raced. It's because I'm determined, he replied. I didn't come into the deep fell to be frightened off. More's the pity for you, perhaps, she whispered, and the color of her eyes seemed to change from crimson to green. I have never liked the kings of Landover. I like you no better. It matters nothing to me that you are from another world, and it matters nothing why you have come. If you wish something of me, you are a fool. I have nothing I wish to give. Ben's hands were sweating. This was not going well at all. What if I have something I wish to give to you? Nightshade laughed, black hair shimmering as her body rocked. You would give something to me. Landover's High Lord would give something to the Witch of the Deep Fell. The laughter stopped. You are a fool after all. You have nothing that I want. Perhaps you are mistaken. Perhaps I do. He waited and would say nothing more. Nightshade came nearer. Her ghostly face bent down to view him more closely, her sharp features taut against the bones of her face. I know of you, Play King, she said. I have watched you travel from the greensward to the lake country to the Melkor and finally to here. I know you seek the pledge of the valley's people and command nothing more than the misguided loyalty of this girl, that charlatan quester Thuse, a dog, 2 kobolds, and those pathetic gnomes. You hold the medallion, but you do not command the magic. The paladin stays gone from you. The mark hunts you. You are a single step from being yesterday's memory. She loomed over him, a head taller, her dark form hanging like death's specter. What can you give me, Play King? Well, you got her attention. Ben edged a step in front of Willow. Protection. Oh, boy. Okay. All righty. The witch stared at him speechlessly. Ben kept his eyes fixed on hers, trying to back her away from him by sheer force of will. The closeness of her dark form suffocating. But Nightshade did not move. I am king of Landover, Nightshade, and I intend to remain king, he said suddenly. I am not the Play King that you believe me, and I think that should have said believe me to be, but whatever, and I am not a fool. I may not be of this world, and I may not yet know everything about it I should. But I know enough to recognize its problems. Landover needs me. You need me. If you lose me, you risk losing yourself. That was smart. I like that. Nightshade stared at him as if he were mad, then glanced at Willow as if to ascertain whether or not the sylph thought him mad as well. Her eyes glittered as they sought his again. What risk is there to me? Ben had her close attention now. He took a deep breath. The magic goes out of the land, Nightshade. The magic fails. It fails because there is no king, as the king was meant to be. Everything fragments and the poison settles deeper. I see it happening and I know its cause. You need me. The mark claims the land, and sooner or later he will have it. The demon will not tolerate you. He will drive you out. He will not abide strength greater than his own. The mark will not challenge me, she sneered, and there was fury in her eyes. Not yet he won't, Ben pressed quickly. Not in the deep fell. But what happens when the rest of the land has withered into an empty husk and only the deep fell remains? You'll be all alone. The mark will have everything. He'll have strength enough to challenge you then. He was guessing, but something in the witch's eyes told him he was guessing right. I think that's a good guess. Makes sense to me. Nightshade straightened, her black form rising up against the gloom. And you believe that you can protect me? I do. If the valley's people pledge to me, the mark will not be so quick to challenge. He cannot stand against all of us. I don't think he will even try. And if you pledge first, the others must do the same. You are the most powerful, Nightshade. Your magic is the strongest. If you give your allegiance to me, the others will follow. I ask nothing else from you. I promise in return to guarantee that the hollows will belong to you alone, always. Yeah, I think he's thought this through really well. Sounds like a really good plan. No one shall bother you here. Not ever. She almost smiled. You offer nothing that I do not already have. Ooh, I disagree with that. I'm convinced by his argument. I don't need you to stand against the mark. I can do that whenever I choose. Not if he takes over everything. He just pointed. Oh, okay. Stubborn little woman. Stubborn little witch, I should say. I can call the others to me, and they will come because they are afraid. Oh, brother, Ben thought. They won't come, Nightshade. They will hide or run from you, or they will fight you. They will not allow you to lead them as they might allow me. The lake country will never accept you, Nightshade, Willow whispered in agreement. Nightshade's brow furrowed. The river master's daughter would say as much, she sneered, but you mistake whom you deal with, Sylph. My magic would sicken 10 times over what your father's would cure, and more quickly than this. Her hand shot out, seized Willow's wrist, and turned the Sylph's arm black and withered. Willow shrieked, and Ben yanked the stricken arm free. Instantly the arm was restored, the sickness gone. Willow was flushed, and there were angry tears in her eyes. Ben faced the witch. Seize me as you did her, he challenged, and his hand closed about the medallion. Nightshade saw the movement and drew back, her eyes veiled. Do not threaten me, Play King, she warned darkly. Ben held his ground. He was as angry now as she. Nor you me or those who are my friends, witch, he replied. Nightshade seemed to retreat within her robes, her sharp face lowered into her raven hair, and one hand lifted slowly to point at Ben. I grant you your determination, Play King. I grant you a measure of courage, but I do not grant you my pledge. If you would have that, you must first prove to me that you deserve it. If you are weaker than the mark, then I ally myself to my disadvantage. I might as easily ally myself with the demon and bind him in a pledge of magic that he could not break. No, I will not risk myself for you until I know what strength you possess. Ben knew he was in trouble. Nightshade had made a decision about him that she was not likely to alter. I still would go back to his original argument about the mark. Why would you trust the mark? You're going to make a pledge? He ain't going to honor that pledge. Nightshade had made a decision about him that she was not likely to alter. His mind worked frantically. The darkness of the castle, the vastness of its chambers, seemed to weigh down on him. Nightshade was his last chance. He could not afford to lose her. He felt his hopes begin to fade, and he fought to hold on to them. We need each other, Nightshade, he argued, searching for a way out. How can I convince you that I possess the strength necessary to be king? The witch seemed to think the matter through for a moment, her pale face lost again within her hair, and slowly she looked up. There was an unpleasant smile on her thin lips. Perhaps we do need each other, and perhaps there is something that can help us both. What if I were to tell you that there is a magic that could rid the greensward of the dragon? Ben frowned. Strabo? Strabo. The smile stayed fixed. There is such a magic that can make you master of the dragon, a magic that can give you command over everything that he does. Use it, and he will do as you say. You can send him from the greensward, and then the lords must give you their pledge. So you know of that as well, Ben mused, trying to give himself time to think. He studied the pale face carefully. Why would you agree to give such a magic to me, Nightshade? You've already made it clear how you feel about me. The witch smiled with the intensity of a wolf eyeing dinner. I said nothing about giving the magic to you, Play King. I said, what if I were to tell you of such a magic? The magic is not in my possession. You must retrieve it from where it is hidden and bring it to me. Then we will share the magic, you and I. Oh, like you're going to trust this? You're going to trust her? Bring it to me, and I will believe in your strength and accept you as king. Do so, and you will hold the promise of your own future. Ben, Willow began, a note of caution in her voice. Yeah, you think? Already I'm thinking the same thing. Ben dismissed her with a shake of his head. He had already committed himself. Where is this magic to be found? He asked Nightshade. Wow. It will be found in the mists, she answered softly. It will be found in the fairy world. Willow's hand clamped on Ben's. No, Ben, she exclaimed. The magic is called Eo dust. I-O. I assume it's pronounced Eo. Eo dust? I'm not sure. Nightshade continued, ignoring the girl. It grows from the midnight blue bush with silver leaves. It nurtures in pods the size of my fist. Okay. She clenched her hand before Ben's face. Bring 2 pods, one for me, one for yourself. The dust from a single pod will be enough to give you mastery over the dragon. Ben, you cannot go into the fairy world. Willow was frantic. She wheeled on the witch. Why not go yourself, Nightshade? Why send Ben Holiday when you will not go yourself? Nightshade's head lifted in disdain. I am admonished by one whose people left the fairy world for this valley when the choice to remain was theirs? You are quick to forget, Sylph. I cannot go back into the fairy world. I was cast out from it and am forbidden to return. It is certain death for me if I go back. She smiled coldly at Ben. But perhaps this one will have better fortune than I. He, at least, is not forbidden entry. Willow yanked Ben about to face her. You cannot go, Ben. It is death if you do. No one can go into the fairy world and survive who is not born to and kept by it. Listen to me. My people left that world because of what it was, a world in which reality was a projection of emotion and thought, abstraction and imagery. Oh, okay. Because I've already read this. I forgot about that. It was a world in which reality is a projection of emotion and thought, abstraction and imagery. There was no reality apart from what we were, and no substantive truth apart from ourselves. Substantive. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Ben, you cannot survive in such an environment. It requires disciplines and familiarities that you lack. It will destroy you. He shook his head. Maybe not. Maybe I'm more capable than you think. Tears glistened in her eyes. No, Ben, it will destroy you, she repeated tonelessly. There was an intensity in her face and voice that was frightening. Ben stared into her eyes and hardened himself against the plea that was mirrored there. Slowly he pulled her close against him. I have to go, Willow, he whispered, so that only she could hear. I have no other choice. She tricks you, Ben, Willow whispered back, her face hard against his. This is a trap, I agree with Willow. I hear the deception in her voice. She was shaking. I see now. She was shaking is not what Willow said. She was shaking. And then Willow speaks again. I see now what this castle is. This castle is a projection of the magic against the wall of the mists. Journey far enough through it and you stand within the fairy world. Ben, she arranged this deception. She knew you were coming to her, and she knew why. She has known all along. He nodded and pushed her gently away. That doesn't change anything, Willow. I still have to go. But I'll be careful, I promise. Oh, like that's going to make a difference? Oh, well, since you'll be careful. As you walk off a cliff. I'll be very careful. She shook her head wordlessly, and the tears ran down her cheeks. He hesitated, then leaned forward and kissed her gently on the mouth. I'll be back. She seemed to find herself again in that instant. If you go, so do I. He goes alone, Nightshade interjected coldly, her face impassive. I want no aid being given by a creature born of the fairy world. I want no interference from anyone. I want to see myself whether the Play King possesses the strength he claims. If he brings the pods of Eodust to me, I will have my proof. I have to go, Willow insisted, shaking her head slowly. I belong to him. No, Ben told her gently. He struggled to find the right words. You belong to Landover, Willow, and I don't yet. Maybe I never will. But I have to belong to the land before I can even think of belonging to her people. I haven't earned that right yet, Willow, and I have to. His smile was tight. Wait for me here. I will come back for you. Ben, I will come back, he insisted. He stepped away, turning again to find Nightshade. He felt empty and directionless, as if some tiny bit of life was turned loose in a sea of debris and blowing winds. He was about to be alone for the first time since he had come into Landover, and he was frightened almost beyond reason. "Where do I go?" he asked Nightshade, fighting to keep his voice calm. "Follow the corridor. There." She pointed behind her, and torchlight glimmered along a shadowed corridor in which mist swirled like a living thing. "You will find a door at its end. The fairy world lies beyond." Ben nodded and walked past her without a word. His mind reeled with whispered warnings that he was forced to ignore. He slowed at the corridor entrance and glanced back. Willow stood where he had left her, her slender form a pale green shadow, her strange, beautiful face streaked with tears. He was filled with sudden wonder. How could this girl care so much for him? He was just a stranger to her. He was just someone she had happened to cross. She had blinded herself to the truth with fables and dreams. She imagined love where there was none. He could not understand. Nightshade stared after him, her cold face expressionless. He turned slowly away and walked into the mists. Oh boy. Next chapter is called Fairy. That'll be fun. Time to meet fairies. There's fairies in my book, my second novel that I wrote, The Caves of Ordered Randomness. Forestera's Fate, The Caves of Ordered Randomness. There are fairies in here. It's a section called The Magical Forest, and I think you'll really enjoy it. These are different kinds of fairies, though. Hope you enjoyed this. I thought that was phenomenal. I think Nightshade is a great character. I think Willow is a great character. I think Ben is a great character. And I even think the dirty, grimy Gahome Gnomes are great characters. I think the name Gahome Gnomes is... At first I thought it was kind of like silly and sappy, like really Gahome Gnomes. But it's funny. It's funny. It works. It works, and you start to see them as these Gahome Gnomes, and you realize what you're saying is they're so dirty and grimy and annoying that you just want them to go home. So the name fits. So I'm loving this book. Hope you are too, and I'll see you for the next one soon. Maybe tomorrow, next day, someone. We'll see. Bye-bye.